meeting to order.
Hail Mary.
And as usual, if there are any public comments, I'll take them at this time.
Absolutely, I would like to speak to the board if I can. One of the things that was brought up at the last meeting, the question was raised in regard to the efficiency audit, and there was supposed to be a letter from the efficiency audit consultant. And that has not materialized yet, and I was just wondering whether that has come forth
Okay,
since the last meeting.
okay, so you're asking, this is the same question now you've asked 3 times.
Right. And I
And
got no
so-
answer.
No, I believe I gave an answer.
Yeah.
I believe it was no. So you have either an unwillingness to accept that answer or something else. I don't understand this. The answer hasn't changed.
So
It's still no.
So has the efficiency audit been completed?
Yes, I answered that as well.
And the results are in.
Correct.
So I would ask, if I may, I'd like to get a copy of that report, please.
Didn't you guys give them a final report?
Well,
You sent
not
one,
the
you sent
final.
one, right?
No,
No.
you told me to bring it.
Oh, I told you to bring it, oh, it's right there.
Yeah.
There you go.
Oh, okay,
Yep.
there it is,
Yep,
Steve.
David
There we
remembered
go.
to have
I
it.
thought you had already received one.
Oh, I did not.
Yeah.
Okay.
When I receive things, I acknowledge.
Okay.
The second question is, as was discussed at the last meeting, there was I don't see it on the agenda, but there was a discussion about the PPFNL or whatever, the costs. Are those going to be discussed at this meeting?
We discuss them at every meeting.
Fine. Thank you.
Okay. With that, I'll take a motion to close public comments.
I'll do that.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Public comments closed. Okay. Number 2 on the agenda, accept the minutes from the May 21st meeting.
I'll move to accept those.
I'll second.
Is there anything?
There's some discussion.
All
Okay.
right.
I would like to include, we had a discussion on the fraud at the last meeting, and Bill presented a question sheet, and David answered all those questions to my satisfaction. I somehow would like to have that also placed in the minutes of the meeting. You guys object to that? Those questions you had, Bill, he answered them. They were answered to my satisfaction. I hope they were answered to you, you guys and your satisfaction as well. And if they were, that they just be part of the,
These aren't them, Stan?
well, no,
It was more than this?
he had a whole list of questions. There was like
It was more
12
specific.
questions, and you answered them all, Dave.
Okay,
And the only reason I want to put that in is we did discuss it,
sure.
and if something should come back of it, it's not like the first time we talked about fraud.
Okay. Stan, do we have a copy of Bill's list? Do we
I have it if nobody else has it.
I don't have a list of questions.
But you handed it out, right, Bill?
I did hand
I
it
did.
out.
Yeah, and this was it here, and Dave answered all the questions.
Okay.
And those were the answers I wanted to hear, and just so it's part of the
So
record.
you wanna hold off on those minutes until we add that in, or what would you like to do, Stan?
No, we just, I think we're good with
Alter the
those.
motion to
Include those.
include the minutes as amended with the addition of those.
Got it.
Okay, all those in favor? Aye,
Aye.
okay, good. Peter, you could go over the financials with us?
Mr. Chairman, we're looking at the April 30th, 2019 financials. We start at the top. Our revenues are good. They're 97% of where they were last year. We skip down to the middle part of our revenues. They happen to be down, and that's because of the jobbing and contract work, which is the first line in that section. And that's kind of stuff that we don't have control of, you know, if people run into our equipment and things, or if people decide to build new equipment, then we can bill for that. So that's down, but in general, everything is looking good from a revenue standpoint. If we skip down to the bottom part where our expenses are, our total power costs are actually down about a little over 10%. So between the revenues being down, the power being down, our biggest cost, we're kind of in line for doing a good job.
Before you leave that, Peter,
Yep.
just one question on page 2. The total expenses are up at 107.5%. Is that a concern, or is that like a 1-month timing issue?
That's actually, Mr. Hayes, that's up 7%. It's 107% of where it was last year,
Right.
so it's up 7%.
Yeah, and the revenue's down 6%.
Correct.
So I'm asking, is that a concern?
Not at the present time, I don't believe that's a concern. If we look at, you know, there are a few things that are up, and last month we had a question on 585 towards the top of the page.
Right, street
that's
lighting.
Streetlights. Now, these financials that would present here are at a highly summarized level. In addition to streetlights, under that, under detail, we have traffic signals expenses are in there. And we've had some, the bulk of that increase is due to expenses we've had with traffic signals around town. The largest thing is, I think we replaced the cabinet down at Liberty and Sylvan Street. And there, you know, was different calls down there for different sets of lights there. And we have to, the thing that pedestrians push, we replaced a bunch of those. But that, in general, is what that line was up
Okay.
for.
So mostly driven by traffic signals in this instance?
Correct.
Okay.
As opposed to streetlights, even though that's
Okay.
what the
Yeah, that's what it's
top,
labeled, that's
the
why.
the top thing is labeled that in
Yeah.
general, because that's, most of the expenses would be in that category, but there is subcategories under that.
Okay.
You know, if we come down, I think I mentioned last month, if we look at 926, which is,
OPEB.
two-thirds of the way down. That's employee pension and benefits, and as we may recall, last year, we had an adjustment to the prior year where we had to go to the new actuarial methodology of accounting for OPEB. And so last year was low because of the way the division had reserves set aside for OPEB, and that was a one-time adjustment. So yes, it's gone up, and as far as that goes, if we remember when the auditors were here and they were going over the audited financial statements, they did say at that point in time that GAAP had it so that they only presented 1 year's of financial statements, because in most cases there was going to be such a wide variance. And as we can see here on this financial statements, we do have a wide variance. So that's just changing the accounting methodology. That's why we have that big variance there. So we do have a little bit of a variance, and that's because of the way the methodology we're now using for the pension. But in general, I don't see anything out of line here that would give us pause at this point in time for a successful year.
Great, thank you.
Having said that, but you know, we're there. You know, if we go to page 4, we've got our capital expenditures. We're going along with that program. The other thing that would be of note is that you know, if we look at our cash accounts, they're up 5% from where they were last year. We do get the flush of funds. The one thing that we do is when we get the flush of funds payment back from MWIC, we do try to save that so that we, in case something comes up. So that would be the reason that particular thing was up right here. If we take these two cash accounts, it's up. If we go to page 5 and we add in the depreciation fund, we're only up $426,000, which is certainly a lot of money. but it is only 2% of our total cash accounts from last year. So where we've got a little more money in the stabilization fund, we've got a little less on the depreciation fund because of the work program that we've been carrying out this year. So in general, we're right about where we were last year. And as I also like to point out, we're still, yes, we've got the money, but we also have some long-term promises. If we take the accumulated provision for pension benefits at the bottom of page 4, in the bonds, we have promised $21 million worth of assets to other people. And so, yes, it's a lot of money, but we are in a position to meet our obligations that we've promised. And at this point in time, as I just said, we're in a good position from revenues standpoint, and I believe from expense standpoint. And I don't see any bumps on the road this year so far.
Okay. I'll move to accept.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Stan,
Aye.
quick question, Stan,
Mark's got a question.
what is the cash available right now, as of, this report? Not retained earnings, but the cash available on
Total cash on hand, I think he's asking Peter.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, so $21,571,233.
Thank you.
Okay, did we already vote? We accepted it, right?
Yes.
We're all set, okay. Dave, wanna go over the DPU report?
Sure. Stephanie, we sent this out, right, to the board members?
Yes.
Okay, so good. All right, just to give you guys a chance to look through, I wanna commend staff, Peter, Mark, Clint, just for going, and actually Jenny, drafting also.
Yes,
But,
mostly
so our
just
staff accountant puts a lot of effort into getting all of our numbers in here. There's a wealth of information in here, but you see that our power sales were good for 2018, like we talked about before, and our power cost $900,000 less than the year before. So that was good. It's a record of everything we did for the work during the year. Right down to what we paid for the power, what we received for revenue. All that information is locked in here, and I don't want to spend too much time going through it. It's the same as last year, no big, large deviations from previous years. But we do need the board to acknowledge it and vote to approve it.
Before we do that, could I ask three questions?
Sure can.
Okay, the first question is very general. Do we have any concerns as a result of having completed this, that we have any problems that we're not aware of?
Peter? Clint? Nope. Me
Okay.
neither.
Second question is on page 57, the peak kilowatt hours was 75 kW.
Mhm.
The next highest month was 70. Are we gonna do the diesel generator again and anything else to try to mitigate that high peak? That was
That's in
significant.
place, right?
Yeah. I already saw it up there.
Yeah,
Except we're
I went by and saw it.
Yep,
Okay,
we're all set up.
all right.
It's been
Is there-
tested and it's all connected, so.
Okay, is there anything else we should be doing to try to mitigate that high peak?
So Clint and Jeff Ellie are running the peak management program, just like last year.
Yeah.
And one of their focuses is to work on our key accounts, the large accounts, the most. They're actually getting in, meeting with those people to talk about our large users, about what they can do.
Huh, okay, good.
So we're trying to do an enhanced version of what we did last year on those big accounts, in addition to everything else that we did last year.
Okay. And then on page 71, there's a lamp report. And they don't even have LED lamps as a category. But I was wondering, are any of those something like there's, almost 3,000 sodium, or over 3,000 sodium lamps? Are those old technology or mercury vapor that we should be trying to get rid of? Page 71.
Is that they haven't
Oh.
changed?
Yeah, I think those are mostly the high pressure sodium security lights that we are in the process of, with the tariff that was approved at the last light board meeting with the LED private area lighting, we're in the process of replacing those as well.
Okay.
Yeah, these are street lamps, and actually, when we got to this point in the thing, as we all know, we've replaced the bulk of our streetlights,
Yeah,
but the report hasn't caught up to
Yeah.
reality, so.
Hopefully next report,
So
the next
we,
report
we
will have
have.
LED here, and we'll
Yeah.
put them in LED.
Yeah, that's,
Clint, haven't you pretty much already done most of this, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, the street light, yep, the street
All the
lights are all
regular street,
complete.
yeah, the private area, we're just starting to do that.
Yeah, the rental lights.
The rental ones?
The rental ones we're starting to
Okay.
do now, but
All right.
all the ones in the street have been completed in the public, yeah, public.
just don't have a category yet, though.
okay. Those are my 3 questions, thank you.
Any other questions? I typically compare it to previous ones, and I usually, believe it or not, I have not done that at this time, but I'm, yeah, but I'm sure we can accept it. If I find any differences, I typically go back 6 or 7 years and compare it with one, and then I compare it with one from maybe last year and 6 or 7 years back, and then I look at them. But I've just briefly looked through it, but I haven't had that chance to compare it. But I'm willing to accept that, because I'm sure if I find anything, I'll bring it up.
Did we move?
I'll move this, accept.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Oh, question.
Quick question, what does this really mean to the customers of Danvers Electric?
It's a report that's put on file with the Department of Public Utilities. It really, it's something that's required, and it's something we do, and we're gonna continue to do it. It really, basically, doesn't mean anything.
Doesn't affect the customers at all?
No.
That's perfect, thank you.
It does affect the customers, it's mitigating expense, doing the LEDs.
Well,
But
that's not the report.
Aye.
Yeah, I mean, things that happen affect the customers. A lot of things that we do here affects the customers, but the actual report is the report, it is what it is, and it does not affect the customers.
Okay, thank you.
The report. So we have a motion to accept. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Dave, I wanna take the agenda out of order here.
Okay.
And have you, before we do the, power purchase, I would like you to discuss agenda item number 7.
Sure.
Okay, and we'll talk about that a little bit, and then we'll go to agenda item 5.
Okay, so to kick off, and today was supposed to be an initial discussion on a few of the financial policies that were brought up in the Baker Tilly report. So the first one I wanted to bring up is, we'll start the easiest and then get to the hard one, Stan, is the investment policy. So Baker Tilly's comment was to adopt the town's current investment policy. You guys got a copy of this in your packet, right? It
Yes.
says policy on banking and general fund investments. The investment section is in section 1.3, investment objectives and goals. And that talks about that we want to invest money to preserve the principal, provide sufficient liquidity, avoid inappropriate concentration, develops an appropriate yield in relation to market conditions. And that's the big one, we wanna start getting some yield from the money that we have in the bank. And then it goes on, section 1.3.3, funds may be invested in United States Treasury obligations, certificate of deposits, repurchase agreements, and money market funds. So today, for the investment policy, we wanted to start and present this to the board and get comments, and then we would and then the thought was we would take those comments and draft up something on the investment policy for the board to consider at the next meeting,
Specific to the electric division.
specific to the electric division. Yep.
Okay.
I'm gonna talk, we have 3 different policies we're gonna talk about today. We'll talk about the investment and the reserves, And what's the third one, Clint? It's the,
The restricted / unrestricted cash.
oh, and then the cash.
Yeah.
Right, so we have three different things that we wanna talk about: investments, then we wanna talk about all of our different, our funds and accounts, make sure we have them all, a policy for all those, and then the cash one third.
So, what's your thoughts on, the investments, slave the town's, policy?
That's what was recommended, and it does have, in section 1.3.3, it has options where we can actually get, interest off the money, and it's conservative in a nature, which will protect the money for us. So I believe we should take this and, it sounds like, follow Baker Tilly's guidelines, and just adopt this to electric division.
Okay, what about, what are some of the other utilities doing? I mean, maybe they're doing better. That would be my thing.
So I did have, a discussion with Middleton, and they do some money market funds. So after we adopt this, then we're gonna have to have a strategy on how much do we put into a treasury, how much do we put in money market, and I believe we'll enlist, an investment counselor to help us put that together.
Okay,
But this gives us the options this gives us the same options that other municipal electrics are using.
yeah.
Right here, listed out in 1.3.3. But then how much money we put in each stand, we'll have to decide that as part of our, is that right, Pete?
Yeah, I believe when I've spoken to the treasurer collector, that would, to do that, we'd probably have to have we'd have to go through town meeting. I don't think we can just have those type of accounts.
Oh, to get those okay, so we,
Yeah, to get those type of accounts, my last conversation with him was that we would need town meeting vote. It would have to be like a board, an oversight committee to see that account. If I
Okay.
understood it right, but we'll have to investigate that, but I don't believe it's just as
does that,
simple
does that make
as-
sense, Mr. That we may need an investment oversight committee that actually looks at what percentages we put into each one to do that. So,
Correct.
but as far as if we adopt this as a policy, the policy's okay. It's if we took any action with the money, then we'd have to make sure
Yes, anything that was outside.
if we
this.
need town meeting or
Correct.
whatever.
If we wanted to go to a stock and bond or some more risky assets, I believe this follows what is allowed by law.
So the policy's the easy step. Then we gotta look at how we can actually
Correct.
invest the
To
money.
get the authority to do,
Okay.
step out of this format.
Thank you, Peter.
Okay, well, come back to us with a recommendation on that.
Sure.
And, I'm open-minded. I wanna see what's best for the customers and for, Denver Electric. That's where I would stand. And, I really wouldn't wanna be the test pilot for anything new, innovative, and creative. I would rather go with kind of a sure thing that others are doing.
Thank you. I can breathe easier thinking that. We think,
Okay,
so,
that would be,
we don't have any desire to get into anything risky.
Yeah, so, okay, so now, so that takes care of investments.
Wait a minute, could I?
Oh, sure,
comment
go ahead.
on
Yeah.
that? Okay, I guess I've got two thoughts. Stan asked for you guys to come up with a recommendation, which I think is appropriate. Two, I'd just like to ask and have you consider, I don't need an answer now, is there any value added by making one specific to Danvers Electric? If we're simply going to say what the town policy is, why don't we just say we're using the town policy, as one of the options or something in your recommendation?
I'd say as we meet on it with the team and go a little bit further in it, Bill, if it looks like we could just do that and say, hey guys, you can just recommend that, we'll recommend that to you guys.
Okay. And then I guess,
Does that sound right, Peter?
Yep.
I
agree.
saw these here, but I didn't know where we were going with it. I guess I would just, and I'm sure there's plenty of time, I'd like to go back to Baker Tilly report myself and this policy and then
Sure.
see if I have any suggestions. I have none this morning.
Okay,
Okay?
good.
Anything, Jim?
I'm good.
Okay, so then, that brings us to, the reserves.
Sure, so,
I wanna talk about the reserves here a little bit, just real quickly. I sent you an email the other day
Yep.
about this. And I have a few thoughts, okay? the Baker Tilly report, suggested that we'd be holding about 250 days of reserves.
Mm-hmm.
And we have 204. So our regular auditors will never, if we had 100 days of reserves or 30 days of reserves, they would never say anything because it is what it is.
Mhm.
Okay, this is something that 10 years from now, if we have an in-depth audit of the division, they're gonna look for 250 days of reserves. So, I mean, I'd like to see us work on doing something about this. And I see there's 3 ways to do something about it. Number 1 is we can charge more. Number 2, we could sell more. And number 3, we could spend less, or a combination of the 3. Okay, if we have to modify an existing policy or adopt a new policy to make this an achievable goal, perhaps that's what we should be doing.
Okay?
That's how I feel about it.
Yep.
Okay? You're the director, and you know a little better than I do. So I certainly would, those are my thoughts. Okay? A few years ago, we were put into a situation with that transformer. I mean, we really lucked out. It could have been much worse than it was, okay? And we owe it to our customers to be good Boy Scouts and prepare, okay? 250 days, according to Baker Tilly, is prepared. 204 days is not, okay? So that's how I feel about it. I don't know how the other board members feel, but I figured now's a good time to discuss that.
So, can I provide a little backup, Stan, on?
Yeah.
So, Stan's right, the Baker Tilly had a recommendation of 250 days, and, so, when we met on staff to start looking at this, my first question is, what does 250 days mean? What numbers are we dividing? What kind of cash is that? And Clint dug into this for us, and he summarized it in this, the first memo here to you guys, and we tried to keep this as simple as possible. However, I do need to start out with Baker Tilly, and Clint has followed up with Baker Tilly. This is just like how you guys have asked them questions, we're still asking them questions and getting them answers, more clarification, they're working with us. They proposed 2 different ways to calculate the 250. One under Moody's, one under Standard & Poor's. The one under Moody's is very clear. That's the first one. It's unrestricted cash and liquid investments times 365 divided by the operating and maintenance expenses expressed in days. Bang. That's a real number. We can get our hands on it any time. If we do it in the Moody's way, right now, or no, I guess at the end of 17, Clint?
Yeah.
At the end of 17, when Baker Tilly did the report, we were already at 231 days. Now, the second one, where the 204 days came from, that was from a Standard & Poor calculation, which it's this down here, it's the unrestricted cash, short-term investments, plus depreciation fund, plus rate stabilization, times 365, divided by the electric operations and total business type activities, plus the debt service obligation. That's where they ended up with the 204 days. These 2 gentlemen have had a hard time getting to that number in a concrete way without making some assumptions. Because everything's a snapshot, where do you get the snapshot? What numbers do we use? Sitting here today, we're uncomfortable using the Standard & Poor calculations. We don't believe it's bulletproof. And Clint?
Yeah, and even, well, yeah, so I was on the phone pretty extensively with Brian Kim from Baker Tilly yesterday, because he basically explained to me in his words, Baker Tilly had to speculate how Standard & Poor's was getting that number of 204. So they basically backed into it with this calculation that I provided. So this is the calculation they used for the audit. However, that was their speculation to get to that number. They don't actually know how the Standard & Poor's calculates that. That's kind of correct.
Yes, I've looked for different things, and
Right.
even if you get documentation that's available on the internet from Standard & Poor's, it's a bit vague when it comes to the actual calculation, because they want you to hire them for their expertise. That's, so it's like a trade secret.
Exactly, that's- yep, that's
They're not
exactly.
gonna do
And did you guys find the Moody's to be?
But Moody's is actually,
No, it's crystal clear.
yeah, Moody's is crystal clear.
Yeah.
So, we believe our recommendation is gonna come back to the board, let's follow up the Baker Tilly and adopt the Moody's calculation for, still the 250 days, Stan, but it's, how do we get to that number? What numbers do we add up and divide to get to that number? And, but we wanted to discuss it with the board today,
Okay,
but that's where we're at, that's where our recommendation is headed.
I'm trying to remember now, reading the Baker Tilly, I believe they mentioned the Moody's things
Hey,
11
hey,
or 12 times
Mark.
in that report. And I actually didn't see where Danvers stood with a Moody's rating, and I asked for one. And I thought it was something the town could provide, and they did get it for us. We only got like 3 other Moody's ratings for municipal electrics for, I forget which one.
That's right, a lot of them didn't have it, you're right.
Yeah, so what are the other ones doing? Are they going, are all of them going with Moody's? The municipals or ratings, or some going with the other? So I understand what's going on here. The Moody's rating is crystal clear, and you know what it is. It's just there, and you have it. I get that. The Standard & Poor's is what has been, with assumptions, has said that we have 204 days.
Mhm.
That's what you're saying.
Mhm.
Okay. So what is our Moody's rating? How many days do we have under the Moody's rating? 231?
As of 2017, we had 231.
Okay. But it's still not gonna change. We still should be holding about 250.
Oh, we agree, especially where the Moody's appears a little more conservative, we would recommend an absolute minimum of 250 days, using the Moody's calculation.
Could you explain more conservative? Moody's is more conservative, I don't follow.
I guess the only way I said it's conservative, because when we have our same, theoretically, our same finances
Yeah,
are put in a formula, and Moody's gets us 230 days, where Standard & Poor's got us 204 days. That's what I mean by more because we used our same finances, and Standard & Poor's came up with less days.
yeah, okay.
That's what I mean by
See,
more
I would
conservative.
interpret that as,
Yeah,
Not as
yeah, I
conservative.
get what he's saying.
Oh,
The
yeah.
oth- The other way, because we only have 204, we should strive to have more cash
right,
to get up to the 250.
Oh, yeah, right, yeah, we need, right,
That's what
I'm saying the same thing.
Not to speak for
Okay.
you, Bill, but.
I don't know whether
Yeah.
to say
No,
conservative
thank
or
you.
not, but it's,
That's where he's going.
I'm
I think.
thinking the
that's-
same as you two
yes.
gentlemen, yes.
okay. All right, if I could, I'd like to give my reaction. I'm always in favor of simplicity and clarity, always, always. However, the big thing that I notice between the two is that the Standard & Poor's includes a debt service obligation, which to me, to my mind, includes not only bonds and loans and stuff like that, but also pension and other benefits, liabilities. So, because that includes more in the denominator, that, I mean, keeping it simple, you've got more stuff included in the denominator, that's why the number goes down.
Mhm.
And those are real, very real obligations for us. So, I would have, at least on my, this obviously is our first look at this, I would have a concern about not including those. And I'm just expressing a concern. We're an advisory board, I'm just expressing a concern in my initial reaction here. That seems to me like something that ought to be included in the calculation. And then I had a question. The unrestricted cash, I've never been clear about what is unrestricted cash versus restricted cash.
We're gonna
in
clarify
our
that,
accounts.
that's coming, right.
Okay,
I want that, and that's part of the, not
Going
this, but
forward.
when we have the whole reserve, so our unrestricted cash is one piece of our whole reserve policy.
right,
So when we looked at the reserve policy, we're gonna by identifying what is restricted in cash and what is not, so everybody knows
Yeah.
what the restrictions on each accounts are. And I believe our intention right now is to have the reserve policy specifically address both the depreciation fund and the rate stabilization fund as other specific policies.
Okay.
So we'd have the cash policy, the rate stabilization policy, and the depreciation policy, isn't that, right?
We
Is
can
that what we've talked
certainly-
about?
Yes. we can
So
certainly
all,
do
so
that.
that's, so all three of those, we'd be, and that's why I got confused putting the rate stabilization depreciation in the cash policy, because wait a second, we're gonna have separate policies for that. How much should we have in rate stabilization?
Yeah,
That's 13 million right now, what should be the number?
yeah,
And I believe that we need a whole separate policy on that one, that's in addition to the 250 days.
I don't see why it couldn't be part of the other one, but that's a nit, you know, whether you kept it separate or not.
You're right.
It doesn't really matter.
And if we could confidently stay, we can become, and we can calculate the S&P one for you guys and stand on the number,
Yeah.
maybe we'd go with that, Bill, but right now, we're uncomfortable, we can do that.
Okay.
When I heard the word we have to speculate on numbers in this,
Yeah, I don't like that.
I don't either.
I ran for the hills. It's like, wait, you know, because I'm after these guys, what number are we, and that's what I said to Clinton, okay, we're adding this plus this, divided by this and this, and I wanna see where those numbers came. I can do that, I'm not an accountant,
Sure.
but I can follow that trail.
So, but another possibility would be to, inflate the,
Yes.
the Moody's, to 275
To go 260, we can think about that, exactly. I was thinking the same thing, Stan.
Oh, raise the bar,
If we that's right.
because you're not including the,
If we're not including that other stuff, instead of 250, we could go 260, right,
okay,
Yep, there's more than one way to get there,
exactly,
as long
Okay.
as everybody knows the assumptions.
right.
yeah, yeah. I'd be okay with that, as
Well,
long as I can
I think
understand
we
how do
should
we go from
probably-
250 to
Yeah.
some other number
Yeah.
that's reflective of what's not included,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Correct.
okay,
Um,
I think it's a good discussion.
If we have to, adopt a policy or modify some existing policies to make the, whatever days we decide for reserves, you know, I think it's something, that should be a goal that we should try to achieve. You know, and I think we should get working. And I wanted to have this discussion first because I know we're gonna lower the rates. And-
Right.
And again, like I said, to me, there's three things we could be doing to boost our reserves, and that is to charge more, sell more, and spend less, a combination of those things. So I wanted to have this discussion, are you sure, you know, before we move on with Clint's report on the power purchase, I wanted to have this discussion first.
So the other thing we asked Clint to do, and he checked he worked these numbers through Ginny, was this year our plan was to take the flusher funds payment back, the $1 billion that we're getting back in flusher funds, and apply that to our unrestricted cash to boost those numbers. That's what, so the
Is
one,
that the best use of it?
well, that would take our unrestricted cash from 231 days, and the estimate right now is it would take it to 242. So even with the plan, how the budget's put together for 2019, we have a plan in place. Oh, have I got the wrong numbers, Clint?
Yeah, these was Ginny
Oh,
sent out.
I gave mine, okay.
Yeah, sorry, it's actually,
It's gonna take it from, to 258? Oh.
yeah.
Oh, so if we take the flush of funds, I'm sorry, I gave my latest one to Mark. If we do what we planned in 2019 with the flush of funds, the 231 days is gonna increase to 258. So we believe that's substantial progress in getting to where we believe this policy is gonna end up.
Does the flush of funds end this year?
We get flush of fund payments every year. It depends on what debt is paid off and it depends on our whole debt schedule with Seabrook and such, because of those escrows up there.
Okay, so that will continue, we'll get something.
Yeah, we'll get a couple $100,000 next year, but we usually get between 250 and 350.
Okay.
This was unique this year.
Uniquely low this year.
No, uniquely high,
High.
because we're over $1 million.
Yeah, it's over.
We
Well,
expect
I
it
thought
to
that
be
was
going
last year.
down to,
Yeah.
we shouldn't be having, we don't anticipate getting this big a payment going forward.
Okay. But we're expecting $1 million this year,
Correct.
and that comes in like July.
Yeah, July, August timeframe.
Yeah, okay.
So this gets back to if we do a drop in the PPNFA, we still will be adding to our unrestricted cash reserves. We'll be adding, we're taking it up to 258 days.
Okay, but, you know, we have a tremendous investment in our system. I mean, that's taken away from that. I mean, in a way. But whatever you recommend, Dave, I'm very open-minded to this. And if, well, like I said, if we have to come up with a new policy, modify an existing policy, whatever, then I think we should give that serious consideration.
Well, and you can see why we wanted to kind of throw this stuff out, to get everyone talking, thinking about it, and then we can come with a better recommendation at the next meeting. We wanted to do it in 2 parts.
Okay.
But
Now,
this is
there
where we're
was
headed.
there was another thing I was gonna ask you about. It also, the report, the Baker Tilly report also brought up, more defined funds.
Yes.
Have you thought a little bit about that?
Yep, so and so we provided the towns, you know, what the town has for funds, so we're looking at what the town has, what they're calling it. And then in the back of this is the water and sewer, what we've adopted for the water and sewer for their funds. So now our goal is to take Peter's financial report and the names of those funds that are there. What do we call the 13 million? It's called this, what does that mean? We're gonna end the policies that this means this. These funds are available for whatever it is, in English. And then this is the restrictions on that account. So the policy is gonna contain each one of those bank accounts that's in Peter's Financial. It's gonna say the name, and it's gonna say what restrictions, if any, are on that account. So that we know what we have for accounts, we can start with that, and what restrictions are on them. And then we can look at how much should be in each one. Is that what you, that's where I wanna go. Because I wanna hear, I don't know, what are the restrictions on the 13 million? I have no idea right now. I kinda have an idea, but I want it written out in English in front of me, so we're not incorrect.
Yeah, I've always been confused since we got into this about what is unrestricted, and I don't think
I'm
I've
still
got a clear
confused.
answer on that.
So our policy is, first we're gonna clarify that, here's what we have and here's what the restrictions are, and then we're gonna have, this is how we should set how much should be in each one, our guidelines. Yep. And we're gonna try to follow along, you know, what the town has in what water and sewer have done, you know, we'll match their format, but it'll have a lot of different things and it'll apply to different regulations. Because we'll adopt the regulations on, what's electric light, 141? I can't remember the number now. What are we governed by?
Oh, 164.
164, thank you. Yeah.
Enterprise.
That's one's
By
complicated
164, right.
formula.
State law, chapter 164.
Yep, 164. So we'll apply that to it. And as you said, Baker Tilly is still actively engaged with us, and they're available, you know, to help us work this through. They want to see us succeed with implementing that, so Clint is already developing a relationship with them.
Okay.
That sounds like a good plan going forward to me, to get clear definitions, clear calculations, plain English,
Yeah.
and understand what's free and what's restricted, and what are the restrictions. So that would help a lot.
Thanks for being patient with us, Peter. Peter knows better than us, but you gotta write it in English for the rest of us.
No, it should be.
We don't all speak accounting.
Yeah.
Right, and I think actually in the Baker Tilly report, if they just took what I refer to as our maintenance or operating cash, and everything else was restricted, I think we were down to like 40 days.
Oh.
So it's what the business feels comfortable having for reserves to meet the needs of our customers. And that's what we're saying about having different definitions and what is restricted and not restricted for different things.
Yeah.
So we're all working on that.
Well, it sounds like we have some goals there to achieve.
Mhm.
And seems like you own it, Dave.
Yeah.
So I'm happy with that.
Thank you, Stan.
Anything else, guys?
Looks like Baker Tilly was a really good idea, and looks like we're really starting to do some actions to benefit from what we learned. You know, that's, to me, very positive.
Yeah, and these are things that you're doing right now that we would have never got from our regular audits. I mean, it was a,
Not their job.
That's correct. The scope of what we hire them
Right.
to do has got nothing to do with this. That's,
and it gave us a direction, and I'm pretty happy with that. With that, so you get back to us, Dave, on what you want us to do.
Yeah, so what I've written is that we're gonna have some draft financial policies at the next meeting.
Okay. And,
Well, Jimmy won't be here, but we will be missing him.
So with that, I wanted to take that first.
Yep.
And now, I'd like to go to the power purchase, Clint, if you could go over that.
You kind of already gave away the ending though, Stan, to everybody. So, I don't know.
Pay no attention to the man behind the curtain.
So, yeah, as Stan had mentioned, we've been, through the course of the year, we've been kind of tracking out, an anticipated reduction in July. We need to find out what number would be appropriate to where we could still land at our target goal, 500,000 in the over-under fund at the end of the year. And then once we got the 2020 projected forecast, we were able to comfortably put forth the recommendation for an 8% reduction in the PPNFA for all classes. So, as it outlines here, residential was gonna go from 0.05075 cents per kWh down to 0.04669. And for all others, 0.05353 will go down to 0.04925. Part of the reason that we're comfortable in putting forth the rate reduction is that the forecasted sales and revenues so far through June 1st are 1.68% within forecast. And also the power costs are within 2% of what was actually forecasted and budgeted. So the forecast is apparently very tight this year. So actually I resurrected, Mr. Underhill will be happy to see it, I think. I brought it back, it's in the third page. Tweaked it a little bit, but I think this is a good visual of kind of where we are in the year, and how far we've come, and then where we anticipate to land at the end of the year as well. So, given the July 1st rate reduction, we are forecasting that we'll land approximately 707,000 in the positive in the over-under fund. And as you can see, the red and blue lines at the top of the bars are kind of zigzagging within each other, but that's basically that 2% within the forecast and within the budget that we've been kind of falling through the first 4 months that we've been tracking. So, and then the other graph that was page 2. So, this analysis was done based off of a 750 kilowatt-hour bill, which is a pretty standard average bill for a residential customer. With the rate reduction, you'll see that we land just above Middleton, and still trailing Peabody though somehow. I don't know. We actually looked up. Jeff pulled all the latest numbers. They had a negative PPNFA last month.
Tom told us he was gonna.
Whatever
put it
that
down,
means.
remember, Stan?
So they're
He
giving
called
money
in, we were
away.
thinking of dropping ours, and he
He said, "Yeah, well, I'll show you
At the
drop it.
yeah.
Give it away."
Playing with their
So-
numbers.
I don't know. So as you can see, we're very, we still offer very affordable electricity, especially, I'm a National Grid customer, and
Me too.
this is actually, it's like, when you actually see it like this, it's just like
Yeah.
dumbfounding. It really is.
Yeah.
So,
I'm surprised with our rate reduction, Middleton comes in under us. That's the first time I've seen that.
yeah, they
They must have dropped theirs.
I'm gonna find out. I've got a
last
meeting set
year.
up with Michael, next couple of weeks, so
Okay.
I'll find out what they're doing.
Yeah, that seems very strange. They must have dropped theirs also, because they've historically been above us. We've usually been number 2. So that was surprising to me when I saw.
Well, maybe they dropped their rate a couple months ago or something.
Well, this is projected for July, so yeah, they may have.
these are all, yep.
Maybe
Actually, if we go back 4 years or so, we were up in the middle. It'd be like right below Reading, above Ipswich and Wakefield. We used to be above them.
Okay,
So it took some work to get below them,
sure,
especially with our capital program that we do.
okay. I had just a couple of comments. In your note to us, Clint, in the second paragraph, as of June 1st, we compare to forecasted, lower than forecasted. Is that the E&E forecast that we're comparing
Correct.
to?
Yep.
Okay. Then we talk about, in the next paragraph, we talk about below budget, and what budget is that? Because we don't even see the budget here, short of approving it.
That's also the E&E budget.
That's
The
E&E.
power
So the
budget,
power budget, correct.
which is shown, it's shown on this graph, right?
Yeah, so that's the actual, the blue
The blue bars.
bar.
Yeah.
That's the
So
E&E
we have
power
that.
budget.
Yep.
Okay.
What they
so
predict
that's a-
power's gonna cost.
Okay, so that's again, it almost is the same as the forecast. Okay. Because I wondered why we're comparing apples and oranges, if you will. We're comparing to a forecast and we're comparing to a budget.
Correct.
But they're really the same thing, is what you're saying.
Right, and it was really, I was just trying to really just kind of showcase that, because the retail sales forecast can be, it's very weather dependent, it's very,
Sure.
so it could, the fact that it's been tracking so well this year is a really good thing. And then the power budget is a little, it's, forecasted differently, but there's still, events that can have a big impact on the wholesale market. But so far, again, this year it's been tracking very closely, which we like, which is good.
All right. I guess the other thing when I went through this stuff is I looked at with the rate change, looking at this graph, the bar graph.
Mhm.
June, July, October, and December all show costs coming in above revenues. The blue bar is higher than the orange or yellow or whatever color that is. Which is concerning, but, it's 4 months out of 7. And because we've been higher mostly the first part of the year, we still come in at 700,000. So I guess it's not too concerning, but it caught my eye that, wow, we're gonna make this reduction and we're gonna start having more than half of the months coming in with costs higher than revenues. Again, it just expressing a concern that I noticed.
I like November.
Yeah.
Perfect, right? That's how they should all be.
One thing I can guarantee is it won't come in that way.
I like it though.
Yeah, me too. It's just expressing a concern, and I'm sure it's really accounted for in your calculation, but I just wanted to state it.
Well, if you do an average peak value of all of those, right? At the end of the year, the revenue will be more than the cost.
Yes,
Mhm.
Right?
Yeah, that's what the 707
So you
says.
divide it 7 by .707, do them
By
all.
12,
Yeah, so it's gonna be okay.
yes.
And that, what's good about that is it provides stabilization, I think, for the ratepayers. I like that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, that's how, now, before we act here, this is your last chance, Dave, if you wanna make up a little ground there, we have to do something to make up a little ground. Our costs are down 10%, we're dropping the rates by 8%.
Yep.
You okay with that?
I think this is being fair to the customers. We're collecting too much money right now. There could be something catastrophic happen later on, we deal with that, if something happens, but right now, we're collecting more money than what the power is costing, and that's not fair to the customers.
Will the customers understand this? Is
Oh.
there any way we can?
Well, so, and that's Bill brought up, should we do a press release on something on the drop in the power, and so we may do that. It's, we wanna see. Unfortunately, as far as the town goes, so we may put it on the bill or something, we'll probably put it on the bill. That, hey, the board work, power costs are down right now, your power has dropped 10%. So we'll probably put it on the bill, I think. Is that right, Pete?
We can, yeah. I
That's
mean,
what we thought of.
The customers will see it when they get.
But
the
they'll
bill.
see their
Because you'll
charge
have-
right there.
You'll have this the chairman has mentioned before, the change in the purchase power fuel adjustment, when it goes down, there will be two, the higher one and the lower one, and then, you know, the people who observe that will see that their total's down and the reason why it's down, and we can certainly put a note on the bottom of that.
I think a note's important.
Okay, we'll do a
Because
note.
a lot of people don't pay attention to a lot of those little things.
Oh, yeah.
But for them to know specifically
Yep.
that the rate went down, I think is important.
Yeah.
Sure, good point.
Yeah, because I would say, I'm with Jim, most people, they only look at what do I owe? They write the check or they
Yep.
put it in their
I
check.
think
Mark,
it's
do you
important
agree
to
with
let
that?
them know
Yes.
that they're enjoying some of the lowest rates around.
Sure.
You know, I mean, clearly we haven't beat Peabody, but,
Yeah.
you know, we're right there.
Right.
You know, and we have been for a long time,
Right.
so.
I guess, well, go ahead, Mark.
Well, Stan, may I?
Stan?
Say yes.
Just as a voice from the residents, I think your approach here is going in the right direction. However, what I would like to know is, on an average bill of 750 kilowatts, how much is the resident actually saving because of the rate reduction? The rate reduction is great, and I even mentioned that on my show last, 2 weeks ago, but I didn't give them any numbers because you guys didn't have those yet. But I think it's a great idea to publicize this because it is something that was due a long time ago, and I think you're doing the right thing. What's the percentage of savings that an average resident will get from this reduction? And that's the important piece. Because the rates don't mean anything to
I can
anyone.
sum it up for you, the more you use, the more you save, how's that? How's that? Is that a good answer?
No. That's not an
I
answer.
can predict that, no.
That's not an answer, Stan.
That's good for sales, Stan, that's great, that's good.
So what is the average savings to a customer on
We
a,
do wanna
on a
sell.
750 kilowatt reduction?
So,
Go ahead, Coach.
Chip, okay, yeah, so it looks like it'd be about a little over $3 compared to.
Well, see, this is what's important for people to understand, that it's not a 8% savings. It's a minimum amount that we're saving because this is a cost that's added to the cost of electricity that we use.
Everybody else does the same thing.
That's irrelevant, that doesn't mean anything to the customer. So it's $3 on an average that the savings would be on a average bill per month.
On a 750 kilowatt hour bill.
That's right.
Yep.
That's the answer I was looking for, thank you.
I think more importantly, the fact that it's reduced.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
I understand that it's been reduced is most important. And we're
When is
trying.
the last time we made a rate adjustment? I'm trying to, it's been a while.
So, you mean a PPNA or,
Yeah, on the adjuster.
Well,
What about the adjuster?
which adjuster are you talking about?
The power purchase.
When was the last time we changed the power purchase?
20 months ago, I think.
20 months ago. So we've been level for 20 months.
Right, and we've experienced ups and downs during that, but
Yep.
because we do it at an RMS,
Yep.
an average peak value,
Yep.
we've been able to hold stability.
Correct.
And any idea how long you think we'll be able to hold this rate?
Well, so, as I mentioned before, we tracked, so we had the 2019 budget forecast, we were comfortable we're gonna land here, once we got the but we didn't want to implement anything yet until we took a look at 2020. With 2020, right now with the budget forecast, it would land on somewhere in the it's somewhere in that north of $500,000 range, so it'd still be safe. We're anticipating through 2020, but of course,
So
we're gonna be.
theoretically, by the budgets, we've put this recommendation to you thinking that we could carry it right through 2020. That's how it's designed.
Cost might go up during the winter, you
Things
know.
could change, but
Yep.
everything that's in front of us today, it's designed to carry it right through 2020.
Yep.
Obviously, we need to come back and, right now, our plan is to get through December and come back and talk about it in January again.
Mhm.
Yeah, 'cause I just remember that one year, that one cold winter there, and then we short gas supplies,
Yep.
and there was some increased costs with electricity.
It can disappear in a heartbeat.
Right.
When does the year end? Is it December or are we on a fiscal year?
December.
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 Yep.
Okay, so we're really talking with what we see today, we could hold that stable for 18 months. With what we know.
With what we know today, exactly.
Yeah,
Well,
obviously, things change.
Yep.
Could change, but.
And again, we'll continue, we're still gonna continually monitor and assess this every month.
Of course.
As we have been doing.
Yeah.
But as Stan kind of mentions, it's nice to have that stabilization, that the average, it'll just ride you through the peaks and valleys instead
Yeah.
of monthly fluctuations.
Yes.
Baker Tilly didn't really like that, did they, when they saw that we did that?
But they didn't at first till we explained it to them. They thought that we didn't have, they thought, oh, we were just doing this, just winging it. And we're like, no, this is a calculated methodology. And once we did the that was the first draft policy, they kind of got mad, they didn't like it. Then we met with them, showed them what we were doing, and they're like, oh, this makes total sense. Oh, it's good, because they realized there was calculations behind it. They
Yeah.
thought we were just like setting it and
Oh.
we'd come out however we would come out.
Okay, yeah.
That was their first read through, right?
Correct.
And then we made them dig a little deeper and showed them what we're really doing.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Oh, yeah.
So they changed their mind.
Yes,
They-
no, we're
yeah,
doing
yeah.
a lot more than what they recommended we do.
Yes.
They recommended either semi-annually or quarterly, we're doing it monthly, so
Right.
we're a
When
lot
did the
more
utilities do that? Cause I was like instrumental behind getting that. with-
Oh yeah, you wanted to make it stable, right?
Yeah, but does any other utilities do it like we're doing it?
They must.
I'm just thinking, you know, cause clearly Baker Tilly brought it up that, you know, when they saw it, they probably didn't understand it, like you said, but, it was to bring stability. Are other utilities doing it?
Yeah, I assume so. They've got to be.
I got the impression when you and I went to Peabody that they do it quarterly, but.
Yeah, PB's.
Yeah.
Same thing.
Yep.
But
Yeah, some are quarterly, some are biannually. It's
Yeah, they don't even discuss it every month, their
No.
power
Yeah.
purchase, they
Nope.
just every,
every quarter, right?
yeah,
And now the private utilities, they only do it twice a year.
okay.
So they're biannually, by regulation.
So I think, I see our customers benefiting from that, at least in stability.
Absolutely.
You know, I mean, surely they could have lower bills at certain times, higher bills, you know, but that average is, it's stable.
Correct. Customers who come in here when we were more on the up and down, know the part where it went up upset people. Most people wanna be able to plan for what
Yeah.
power costs are gonna be, and that's what we've offered.
So you got more complaints back then when you didn't do
Correct.
this?
Yes.
Yeah.
Correct.
Okay, so Dave, before we approve this, you're all set with this?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
I have one more question. Given the earlier discussion about, we have three options to increase our reserves: charge more, sell more, spend less. Given where we're projecting putting the flush of funds in, and that should raise our reserves to a more comfortable number, are we still think we should go ahead with this rate reduction in this amount at this time?
Yes. Yep, we've taken that into consideration.
Okay. That's my question.
Okay, so with that, I'll take a motion to approve Clint's report and a power adjuster rate decrease.
I'll motion for that if we think November.
Why
He likes to
Dead
laugh.
even.
Oh, dead even.
No, I don't want November, I want that,
So the question is there a
All right, you
second
don't
for
like
that
my-
motion as worded?
no.
Well, you're not the only one who could second.
Yeah, I know.
I'm not gonna second it.
Yeah, I'm not seconding
Stan
either.
wants August, I like November.
No, July.
I mean,
It's July, right? July 1st.
we want our revenues more than our costs. That's what we want. We don't want them even, we want them more. That's what we want.
Apparently there's no second on your motion, Jim.
All right,
Sorry.
so
I'll move that we
withdraw
accept it.
back.
I'll move that we accept it as submitted
Stephanie's gonna-
with a
what
rate
did they move
reduction
again?
effective July 1st.
I'll
You
take
wanna
a
second
second.
mine?
I'll second
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, all set.
That was good.
Okay, approval of the electric vehicle tariffs.
So on the electric vehicle update, we have, we're gonna take receipt of the first electric car, the Chevy Bolt, this week is coming in. The charging stations are ordered.
Yeah, they're scheduled the the last week of June, they're gonna start working on that.
So we have that is coming in, so we charged Clint with, if we have charging stations at the Hobart and Elm Street parking lot, what are we gonna charge the customers? We charged them to come up with a rate, and Clint can present that to you folks.
I saw the email,
Okay.
but I'll take a
I
hard
have hard
copy.
copies for
Yeah.
record.
And this is a rate that we need to file with the DPU.
Correct.
Thank you.
Steph, you have a copy?
Is that something
This,
different than?
just the memo.
Oh,
So we're only gonna charge at the public parking lots.
Correct.
There's-
So only where the public is gonna be allowed to use them.
Yeah.
The municipal chargers, the public won't be allowed to use those.
Right, that'll be here in that town hall.
Correct.
Yeah, that seems reasonable to me.
And are they behind fences or something?
We haven't figured that, if they're gonna be locked, I don't know yet.
Okay.
Clint knows, but I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a way that you can program the fleet fobs, so you have to have, you have
That's
to be
a
a member of
fob,
the fleet
okay.
to actually access.
The thing we used to get
station.
gas at the okay, that's how.
Yeah, yep. So yeah, so we, as David mentioned, we needed to basically assess a rate that would keep the, utility whole and also account for all of our distribution, our maintenance fees and everything associated with running the stations. So just kind of walk through the memo, and the first part we wanted to look at was obviously the electricity costs, the power costs, and to reflect the capacity, transmission, and our make whole costs for what's gonna cost, to get the power to the stations. That basically came down to about 8.5 cents per kilowatt hour. And we, after speaking with ChargePoint, we assessed basically a 12-hour duty rate, which means that we anticipate that these stations will be utilized on average 12 hours a day throughout the year. And with that assessment, it lands about 66 cents an hour for the electricity only. Then we looked at the anticipated 10-year lifespan of these stations and basically just appreciated the upfront capital to install them over that 10 years and assess that to an hourly rate, which came out to about 34 cents. And then finally, with the internal in-house tracking, the analysis of, how the stations are performing and what times of day people are actually using these, the actual physical maintenance of the structure, and then the administration fees through Tangent, and then also through ChargePoint for their actual their like the money handling fees, so they'll basically be handling all the money through us. That came up to about 24 cents an hour. So if you sum them all up, it comes out to $1.25 an hour, which seemed reasonable after speaking with a couple EV owners. It's pretty much in line with other publicly owned stations, and you can actually go on to the website that ChargePoint has. You can go through and see all the charging stations within your wherever you're at. You can go through and see what the rates are. So we just looked at a few. I think so Ipswich was $1.25. Gloucester had one that was, Manchester had one that was $1. Reading's at like $1.58. So we're in line with all the other municipalities pretty much. And then if you look at some of the private ones, there's one in Middleton at the CBS that was actually $3.53 an hour. So we're well below some of the private ones. And then additionally we did just a little analysis basically. So if a customer's paying $1.25 an hour to charge the vehicle, if you go through the fuelsource.gov website, they basically equate like the offset for what the customer would be saving versus a gallon of gasoline. So it's roughly half the cost to get the same amount of mileage for that amount of money.
Okay, a couple
So-
of questions real quick.
Sure.
What does one of these charges cost?
It depends on, so the one at Elm Street, I think
Oh, they're not all the same?
they're a little bit different just based on the installation, how difficult. So the actual capital is about $7,000 to $15,000 a station. And then
Per
the
dual charging station?
correct, yeah.
Okay.
And then the
So
installation.
each one does two?
Yeah, they're dual port stations, yeah.
Okay, and is it credit card or?
So it's the company ChargePoint, it's on the phone, so
Oh.
you load money into it, and then,
Yeah.
and they facilitate every charging station in the area, so.
Okay.
So it's basically you load the money into it, I think it's like a $25 minimum balance, and then you pull up to the station, and fob in, and you're good to go.
All right, so
Kind of
they
like
put-
how your transponder works with the
Easy
Easy
Pass.
Pass, yeah.
Okay. Well, okay, so they cost between $7,000 and $15,000. We're gonna get 4 of them. Any grant money?
Yes, yeah, so we've applied for 2 different grants, there's one for the public stations, and then there's, one's exclusive for fleet stations. So, and Jeff Ely is in charge of that, and he's actually, gone through the approval process, and according to the anticipated timeline, we should receive the funding sometime this summer. But, as Stan mentioned at the last meeting, or 2 meetings ago at this point, once we go.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah, I said,
looking at
don't wait for the
Stan,
grant
yeah.
money.
Don't wait for grant money, schedule the work, so we went ahead and working with Voltrek, we did schedule the work, so it's starting.
Thank you.
Yep.
Is
So
there a
last
big
week-
difference between the public and fleet,
Cost-wise, or?
cost-wise?
No, it's really just the ease of installation, it's the actual, the physical equipment is the same.
Okay.
So like, for example, the one at One Burrows back here, we had to set a pole overhead, we're gonna mount it to the pole, there's no underground work, it's very straightforward, so that was minimal versus, the Hobart, where we have to come down a pole, go across the sidewalk, go across the grass strip, so.
Okay, now, another question. Are we carrying insurance on the municipal ones? I mean, if somebody plows into one at the public parking lot, we can recover from their insurance company. But if somebody from the town drives one over, I mean, are we self-insured? or-
Self-insured for that. It would be below our deductible.
Okay. If you think we're charging enough, it seems to me it's well thought out.
Yep.
You took in everything into consideration other than maybe insurance.
I think it's extremely well thought out. I can't believe the detail on this. Thank
Yeah,
you.
when I saw it, my question was, how'd you get to $1.25? And this answers that, so it looks very thorough to me.
So we're gonna approve that rate today.
We'd like you to,
Okay,
yes.
so we'll,
I'll move to approve
I'll
as submitted.
second.
all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. $1.25 for, an hour for electricity.
There you go.
The second, I'll put my quotes up, new rate that we wanted to discuss this morning is one that we actually did back in 2013. So this is the last time we adjusted the split between the base rate and how much went for fuel costs in the base 9.4 cents was in 2013, in February of 2013. As Clint and us, we've been working to tighten everything up to get ready for the financial policies and such. The DPU does not have any record of this filing. We don't know why. There's possibility that the DPU had some issues with an office getting flooded. He actually told us that.
Yeah,
So
first.
they could have lost it. However, so today, before we talk about any future changes in the rate, we would request the board vote to approve the rate that was done on February 1st, 2013, just to acknowledge that so we can do an official filing.
Ooh. I have some thoughts on that.
This is how we're doing it right now.
Yeah, I want to see, I don't feel comfortable, doing something, that was the responsibility of a previous board. That's my feelings right off the bat.
So what you're doing is that you guys are right now voting this as a new rate. This would be MDPU 142 going forward. So you're voting this going forward. You have no effect on anything behind us today. This takes effect, we're gonna sign it today. So you see I put my signature and signed it today. So this is, you're voting on a rate, oh wait, it says on February, how can they do that, Clint?
So the effect, so we talked to the DPU about that, so effectively, we implemented this rate internally February 1st, 2013. However, we're not able to, go back in time and file it with that date. We can put the effective date of when it actually has been effective, and the filing date is July 1st. So, it's effective, it's been effective since February 1st, built into our rates.
So we can tell the board that we've been billing according to this rate
It has been
since
this way
February
correct,
2013.
and we were all operating
So
under.
we can tell you, that you're acknowledging, that's how we did it.
Right.
Yeah, it says right in here, was submitted in 2013, no longer on record with the Department of Public Utilities.
Right.
And to me, that's pretty clear.
Okay.
Hopefully that makes you guys feel comfortable enough that
Well, now I'm a
this is
little
how
bit
they told us.
comfortable.
Thank you, Clinton.
Ah,
Yeah.
But I've never been one to be big on changing something or
Right.
that the previous board has done. But I'm okay with that.
So we're really not changing it, we're simply reconfirming
Acknowledging,
what they did.
Yeah, so I'll take a motion to accept.
I will.
And I'll second.
All in favor? Aye.
Okay.
You're all set with that, Dave?
Thank you. Mark's been awful quiet on meetings, Stan.
Trying to keep the chill out of my bones in there. It's like a meat walk right now.
It is. That's why I wore a sweatshirt.
I know, I gotta
Because
start doing that
I
picture.
remember every meeting.
Stephanie said that to me, but it was too late for me, I didn't have anything to bring in.
Cooler is more conducive to the work environment.
That's right.
Okay, with that, Mark, how
Well, I
about giving
prefer
us
the,
a engineering update?
All right, so we're continuing to work on Center Street, and again, that's just a huge project now, we're doing the cutovers now. Obviously, the last session we had, I mentioned it was energized, we're continuing to schedule the cutovers now. One of the other big projects that we've actually just started now is Water Street. We're actually reconducting all the open wire on there, so we're just kind of in the preliminary stages with pole sets. And we're also looking to run an express circuit from the Danversport from the Danversport circuit, which is, it comes down Endicott, and it basically shoots left down like Liberty, Water, Liberty area there. And so we're looking to tap that so we can run express from right at the intersection of Endicott and Water Street. We want to run express cable all the way down to basically the island area, you know, Water Street towards Peabody, where the old deaf school was, the school for the deaf was down there,
Okay.
where they turned into condos.
Yeah.
So we want to be able to feed that area, the bowling area, because we're sort of restricted in the sense from, as far as our feeder ties down that area on Water Street. So that's our Endicott East Circuit, and what we're just looking to do is get some relief for that. So this is a huge project, a huge endeavor that we're looking to start now. So we're, again, reconductoring 1,600 feet is what it's gonna be of bundled cable. Excuse me, 2,700 feet of bundled cable, open wire, from the Danversport circuit, and that'll actually feed express right down to the island area towards Peabody off of Water Street. And then we're also looking to reconductor some open wire and bundle cable, and that's another 1,600 foot run on our Endicott East circuit. So huge endeavor that we've just begun, still continuing with Center Street. We have also, still working on the standards, another huge project. Working with TRC still on the possibility of Station 42 revamp. You know, looking at the contingencies of whether we want to upsize the transformers versus the adding in a fourth bay, so, a fourth bus or another transformer. So these are different options we're looking at. Just thinking about the future.
Voltage.
So it would be 115 to 23 if we did that.
Okay.
Yes. So these are things we're looking at, just trying to stay proactively ahead, keeping in mind that, you know, we are growing, obviously, the load is growing. We're doing things to curtail that with demand response and the generators, however, we still want to be proactive with thinking ahead and making sure that we're able to handle the future load as we continue to grow. So those are a lot of the sort of the big projects that we're focused on right now. And we're also doing some breaker testing right now at a lot of our 5 kV substations to stay in compliance. So,
Will you do a tie with Peabody on that end?
well, that's at Station 42. So what would
Okay,
that
is
would
that, okay.
Yeah, that would be at Station 42 is where we're ultimately looking right there. So our feeder ties are out in the field with Peabody as well as Middleton. So,
Okay.
so we're just, again, looking at different avenues as far as how do we want to handle, you know, future load growth? Do we want to, from a feasibility standpoint and just redundancy standpoint, is it better to add an additional transformer somewhere down the line with an additional, you know, bus and additional bays? Or is it make more sense to upgrade the existing transformers? So we're just weighing out the pros and cons of both, and we're working with TRC engineering firm to help us kind of weed through that process.
Are we looking at more load growth, or are we looking at more customer growth?
Well, I think they go both hand in
Yeah,
hand.
they're both. They would be both.
Well, I mean,
Yeah.
we just took a tremendous lighting load off of our system.
Mhm.
We went to LEDs.
Yep.
Peter, customers, Do we have
Yeah.
more customers now than we did 10 years ago, or?
Probably
About the
about the
same, right?
same, yeah, it goes up and down.
There's a lot of
among small
developments that are going in
businesses.
continually, there's the concept of the new development down on Maple
Yeah.
Street there, so there's a lot of projects that are going on, a lot of customers are expanding, excuse me. Up at Cherry Hill, we have some pretty big customers up there.
But am I wrong to think that loads 10 years ago were much higher than they are now? or-
That's correct.
Yeah, yeah,
Well-
I'd like to use my house as an
Wrong?
example.
No,
Or
loads have dropped. Our
Yeah.
sales have been very flat
Yeah.
across the industry and actually have dropped. People have gotten,
Yeah.
they're conserving more,
Those are the big
they're more energy
conserving
efficient.
customers.
Yep,
So our peak, like 10 years ago, was like 80 megawatts.
correct.
Now we're at 75. However, when we were at that 80%, when we're at that 80 megawatt threshold, we really should have been looking at the future. I mean, we were kind of behind the ball a little bit then as far as looking at maybe doing some upgrades down there. Thankfully, with demand response and everything of that nature, we're in a good position now, so we're just looking ahead.
Yeah, well, what's the status of the new relay house?
That is on a standstill until we determine, as I just described with regards to the possibility of expansion at 42 down in the future, whether we do upgrades in the transformers or whether, until we can determine that, we have to wait, because what happens is, in the event we ultimately determine saying we want to, at some point down the line, we want to make provisions to add another transformer and another, bus and breakers, we would have to add another panel inside the control house in order to accommodate all the, for the relays that we'd need. If we're gonna obviously just upgrade the transformers, as they are, with making provisions to the oil containment, the foundations, then we would be fine. But however, we just have to make that determination before we can ultimately proceed with that last step of the control house.
Yeah. I got a couple other questions for you, Mark. When are you gonna light that transformer generator off?
So we'll be looking to capture transmission peaks, and we think that those are,
I mean, is it all hooked up right now?
it is hooked up now.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
I wasn't sure, it looked like it was off in the corner, and I didn't know if it was hooked up or not.
Yep, it's all hooked up.
Has it been tested, Mark?
Yes. Yep,
So we
tested
test
it.
run it.
Yeah.
Okay.
We haven't tested at the full capacity because we didn't have the loading to do so.
I would
But
like
we
to
did
keep
test it
pressing.
at a lower capacity, and everything was working accordingly.
I'd like to be present, if you could, like, send me an
Sure.
email or something.
Yeah, 'cause we're
I
gonna
wanna
end up
see
doing-
how that sinks in to a larger load.
Mhm.
And I know it's all automatic and everything, but I just kinda wanna see that for my own,
Yeah, they're gonna be doing, another
Yeah.
test at some point, once the loads increase a little bit more, when we get, when the
Yeah.
weather gets a little warmer. They're gonna do another full test prior to that, so, that date is to be determined now at this point, but we will ultimately be doing that.
and
Okay.
so a
I
phone
would-
call that when you're gonna do that, then I could go up there, I'd like to see that.
Mm-hmm.
When they were testing it, they didn't see me, but I was standing outside the fence.
Oh, you were there?
I was there. I'm
I'm
intrigued.
very
by that.
intrigued
Yeah.
by how it sinks into a much larger load. And it just seems to me that that is a potential for an issue. If something went wrong, that would be where it would go wrong. I don't know, I just wanna see that, just,
It saved us last year.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, 2 years ago technically, when we
Yeah.
had,
In June.
T1 out,
When
correct.
June
We brought
was-
it in
yeah.
early June, and, you're right, we were peaking around 50 megawatts at that point, and we were actually, with the contingencies of National Grid, we were down to almost we were actually down to one transformer at that time.
how,
so.
what is the load of the generator? I mean, what's the peak load for that?
So those generators, they're two megawatt units, and they run at 80%.
There's
So-
two,
There's two 2 megawatt units, yep.
so 4 megawatts.
So you'll be running around, 3.2.
Okay.
Yep.
Well, I didn't realize it was that big.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
It's
Oh,
a tractor
wow.
trailer.
Yeah, so 3.2
yeah.
megawatts is,
Oh, I thought you knew there was a big rate. Oh, yeah.
That's,
well, I
that's
didn't-
reduced
I-
at 80%.
I didn't
yeah,
know it
they
was that big.
run
Oh.
about 80%.
No, geez, that's pretty big.
But they were already there?
Yeah,
They're
they're
up there
They're
now.
there, they're huge.
Oh, yeah,
They're
I know,
beautiful.
I've seen,
Yeah, that's pretty good size.
Oh, I think they're beautiful, okay.
I think they're beautiful, Jim.
Another thing I'm gonna ask about, how do you handle overtime for, like, the line crew?
as far as what, like
Like,
specifically?
does it go by seniority, does it go by?
So they have a list where they
And-
track their hours, and that's how it goes
So
by.
the contract requires us to fairly distribute overtime. So we have to come up with a system so that we fairly distribute it among all the
So
employees.
if it was me, Bill, and Jim, and I work today, so
He'd work
tomorrow
tomorrow,
would be.
the next day.
Okay.
Yeah, so they keep track of it that way, and then what they do is, if you refuse it, you still get charged the hours.
Yep.
Okay,
So, and they run the list down there themselves.
yeah,
They
So
keep
we used
track.
to do it at GE,
Yep.
the stewards kept the list. There
Exactly.
was no problem
So
with
it
it.
Yep.
is.
They track it all the time.
okay.
Mhm.
Okay, I'm all set with my questions for now. Anything for Mark, you guys?
No, the one question I had for it was, are you looking, you mentioned at the last meeting that you thought we'd be at capacity in 2023, and so my question was, assuming the answer was yes, are you looking at that, and are you planning to increase capacity, and you already answered it.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah, we're looking at
I'm
it.
all set.
Yep.
Thank you, Mark.
Okay. Dave, bring us up to speed.
Well, the first one is sad. We did receive Jim's resignation letter today, and we're sorry to see you go, Jim. And we wish you the best in your new endeavors, and really thank you for everything you've done for this board and for the town. Thank you.
And I've gotta move on to, I'm having surgery, so that's next month. And that's what it is, gotta do it.
We wish you the best.
Well, good luck.
Thank you.
Your health is the most important thing, Joe.
And so we have, I spoke to the town manager and his secretary quickly about getting going to get a candidate to replace Jim, so we'll work on that. And to get candidates for the town, they go through, there's a form the town manager has to fill out, if anybody's interested, they fill out that they desire to volunteer for a town, they fill out the form, here's a file of those. On the personnel updates, we have a line worker candidate that we are reaching out to make an offer to, so hopefully we'll be successful with that. We found a good candidate to be our line worker. The advertising is underway for the engineer to replace Clint. And the third thing is at the NEPA Line Worker Rodeo, we had two of our line worker floaters, Pat Crowley and Steve Hennessy, go up and participate. Patrick, he placed in 2 events up there.
Oh,
So
cool.
we were very proud of our 2 line worker floaters that went up there, and they're really good. And they made Danvers Electric look good, and they made themselves look really good up there, so I was
Excellent.
pleased with that. So, we did that. On Summer and Maple Street, we actually have a shipping date for the signals. We have a shipping date, they're gonna be picked up on June 28th and delivered to Danvers the week of July 4th. And on our meter replacement program, we have, the first order has been placed so as to get the first batch of replacement meters. We don't have a time yet on when they're gonna come in. We hear it's about a 12-week delay. And they're, obviously their factory's producing them, we gotta need to get a spot in that. So we haven't heard yet, but are expecting 12 weeks. And staff, we're meeting among ourselves to see what can we do about using in-house staff and some of our part-time people to do some of these replacements ourselves. So we're gonna work through and see how much we can replace ourselves and how much do we have to contract for to get these replaced. But we do wanna get out there and replace those 7,000 meters that are still in the system. Peter, invoice cloud?
Today, we're cutting over from the test site to the production of Invoice Cloud. We're anticipating in about an hour and a half, the customer data will be in there. We'll make the first test payment, and then shortly after that, we'll be open up to the general public.
Are you gonna be the first one, Pete?
No, they're back there working on it. We're about an hour and a half late, but today is the cutover, so you'll be working on it until it's up and running. But if it does provide any inconvenience to our customers on a discount day or anything, we will make the accommodation to the customer because our site is down at the present time.
Clint and Jeff Ellie are working on putting the numbers together on the solar projects at the landfill solar and Smith School Solar. So they're running the first numbers, they don't look great, but they're gonna get the whole financial presentation on that to you guys shortly. And we're also working on 3 new power contracts that we've talked about before. It seems like the Nextera Solar nuclear. That's when we have solar power, and they've got nuke to back it up when the solar is not producing. That's the first one that's probably gonna come to fruition. And then we have the biomass one and the wind contract coming after that. All three of those seem to fit our portfolio quite well in the years that they're gonna come in, so all three of those are in progress. And that's all I had. Clint, Pete, did I forget anything?
I think so.
So that's all I had, Mr. Chairman.
All right, thanks, Dave. Any questions for the director?
I think it was mentioned last time, a key item dashboard was on the works.
Oh, yeah, so, oh, shoot, yeah, so I had it out. You know what, it's probably not quite ready for prime time. It's a page, yeah. So the dashboard comes off of this. This is off of our energy. This is the flow chart that we're using right now for the efficiency review, how we're implementing things. And we did have this in a dashboard format like we have for the, so do that. So, yeah, we'll do a combination. Clint has another flow chart like this of his, this is the time allocation and on the projects and the priorities. So we'll do a modification of these two. These are what we're using to track projects and track how we're doing on everything. And we'll have a modification of this that we'll present at the next meeting, Bill.
Okay.
It'll be a combination of these two things, I believe.
Okay, at some point, could you give us an updated org chart? It's been about a
Yes,
year or so.
September we'll have that.
Oh, September. And, we were gonna do quarterly, so I think it's probably July, we're gonna do the next capital projects review. I think we did that. Did we do it in May or April? Anyway, what I'm assuming is you'd give us, what the capital plan is, and then Mark would report on it.
Yeah, so we'll.
Because I can't remember what's on there.
Right, a lot of years we take July off.
Yeah.
So we'll have to talk about our summer schedule, but definitely, especially if we do take July or August off, we'll look to the next meeting to have we'll have a capital update, definitely.
Okay. That's all I had.
Jim, anything?
I'm good.
Okay. Dave, I have a couple of things. When you go over the establishing of more defined funds, you might want to consider, I'd be open-minded to this,
Okay.
to a community betterment fund. That's Danvers Electric's commitment to the community. And what I mean by that is, there's certain things that we do, for betterment in the community.
Like the banners and such.
It has occurred to me, and this is one of the reasons why I asked about the overtime. Shouldn't the guys, when they put the banners up, be doing that on overtime? And the reason I say that is because when they're doing banners, that means there's time that they're not upgrading Danvers Electric's electric system. Okay, so we're losing on two fronts at the same time. And, it's good to throw them a bone every now and then. And it just seems to me that it should be on overtime.
So,
You can't be cheap all the time.
no, and so we do have an overtime program, and so just in the past 2 weeks, we reviewed our overtime and we reviewed extended hours for 2 projects that we're gonna do. Mark has put together a plan on, he had 2 projects that is cost effective for us to do it in-house. He put together a plan on the overtime hours, when it would be, extended days, submits it, and we approve that plan. So we definitely have overtime for the guys. We have to look at it on a case-by-case basis, Sam. Sometimes banners are done on overtime. I just can't commit to you today that we're gonna do them all on overtime. But we will consider it.
My thing being is, if they're putting up banners, they're not working on upgrading the system. That's the way I see it.
Yep.
Okay, maybe, other people see it a little differently, but as far as just the establishment of a community commitment fund that, so the next time we need traffic lights, okay, we know where it's coming
Can't see, Pete, I can't say no right away. I don't know if it's legal or not, see, but finally, Stan, I didn't say no right away. We're gonna think of it, a community better, I don't know, can we have one of those? Right away, I'm gonna call Tom, see if Peabody has one, but,
Well, they do things differently.
yeah, maybe I don't wanna do that, you're right.
Yeah,
Nick, I retract that last comment, Stephanie.
Okay.
We'll check if it's legal first.
And like, for example, if, let's say that, there was a chance to, pave our right-of-way. And like, the private sector for the bike people came up with half, and we came up with half, or something, I'm just saying, something like that. And then we could say, yeah, you know what, we have a community betterment fund, and that would be appropriate to use it for that.
For that, okay.
That's just something I can think of right off the top of my head.
Sure.
And then there's never any discussion, and when it goes to town meeting, that's all it will be presented, that's what we have the money for. You know, then there's no, controversy.
Sure.
Whatever. So that's just something for thought.
No, but now's the time to talk about it, when we're talking about all those other funds, so.
Right, so just maybe think about a community betterment fund.
Sure.
Okay, and I'm sure there's all kinds of ways to use that, you know, and as soon as somebody sees something like that, everybody will try to get their hands on it.
Right.
You know, but it would be for the electric division and you as the director to decide.
Well, the whole authority on who can spend the money out of it, that's a whole different ballgame. It
Everything
might
has to
take
be
town
approved.
meeting to spend the
No,
money out of
well,
it, I don't know, but
that's
that's,
the one thing I've learned, that it's up to town meeting.
yeah.
You know,
The town meeting would have to create it, and then we'll see, but,
yeah, but it is just some sort of,
cool.
so when you're looking into the, you know, more defined funds, perhaps an established, because we are doing community commitment and payment in lieu of taxes, and there's a lot of things we're doing. You know, the electric vehicle program,
Yep.
that type of thing. You know, that is a commitment to the community, putting up electric chargers,
Cool.
you know, in public parking lots. You know, that is a commitment. You know, so.
And we want to sell electricity.
Right.
How would that be presented to town meeting? Is that something you would
I
do?
don't know yet.
Okay.
But it's just something that I thought about it a little bit, and maybe you could, you know, look into it
Absolutely.
a little more. I don't have anything else, so I guess we'll set the next meeting. Bill, you wanna get out of here?
Yeah.
I'll motion.
Stan, what
Wait,
were you
wait,
thinking
we'll
about the
set the
summer,
meeting
Stan?
first.
What?
Oh, I'm not gonna be here.
Yeah, he's not.
All right, so it's
Yeah,
up
so
to you.
you're already moving to adjourn, that's why.
Yeah, it's up to you, Bill, what's your schedule?
Well, what are you proposing? I'm out of town from like the 11th of July to the 21st, I think it is. That's a Sunday, I think, so I could do the 23rd if you wanted to do that.
Yeah, sometime towards the end of July.
So if we could do like one summer meeting, if we did it on July 30th, and had that be the July and August meeting,
Yeah.
would that work for you,
Yeah.
Clint?
Yeah.
July, Peter, you here the 30th?
Okay, July 30th sounds like a good day.
Okay.
All right, July 30th, 8:30.